very good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Sonia, a student from the Faculty of Science. Welcome to You Alive, organized by the NUS Office of Alumni Relations. You Alive, Lifting Thought Leadership, is a quarterly speaker series that features global thought leaders and captains of industries who will share their personal journeys and engage in an open dialogue. Each speaker will have 30 minutes to share about a topic close to their hearts, followed by a 20-minute interview with our moderator, Mr. Wiswa Sadasivan, and end with a 40-minute Q&A session. For our Q&A session, you may make your way to the microphones placed along the aisles, introduce yourselves, and speak directly into them. This is essential so that the online community is able to hear your question. We will also be using Pigeonhole Live. If you have a smartphone, a tablet, or a laptop computer with you, just launch your internet browser and go to pigeonhole.at. Key in our event passcode, which is UAlive. I repeat, it is UALIVE. Click go, and you're free to fire away all your burning questions or vote for any question that interests you. Popular questions with more votes will stand a higher chance to be answered. Mr. Tan Chade-Meng is one of Google's earliest software engineers. Besides working on Google's search engine, Mr. Tan also started mindfulness training courses to help fellow Googlers find inner peace and their minds to manage stress and negativity. The success of these mindfulness training courses led him to write the bestseller, Search Inside Yourself, and found the non-profit Search Inside Yourself Leadership Institute. Tonight, we are very honored that Mr. Tan is here to share how all of us can access joy, which fuels our creativity and inspiration for innovation. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome on stage Mr. Tan Chade-Meng.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My friends, when I was, sorry, there is an interesting, fascinating relationship between happiness and success. So I grew up in Singapore, and my guess is that all of us who grew up in Singapore has a very similar experience on this point, which is when I was growing up, it was drilled into my head, my very thick skull, this idea that success will lead to happiness. So now you study hard, you suffer, never mind. One day you're successful, you'll be happy. That's what I've been taught. Right? Success leads to happiness. However, I think all of us have friends who are very successful. I think maybe that's you, who are very successful and miserable. Right? Yeah, if you don't have a friend, that's you, right? You know, there's a joke, right? It's like 1 out of every 4 person is crazy. If you have 3 friends who are normal, that's you. It turns out that success doesn't necessarily lead to happiness. In fact, according to various studies, that only happened in one very specific situation, which is escape from poverty. If you go from poor to not poor, so not poor means like middle class, where you're neither poor nor rich. If you go from poor to not poor, your happiness, it makes a huge difference in your level of happiness. However, if you go from not poor to rich, so from middle class to having a lot of money, doesn't make that much difference. If you go from rich to very rich, it makes even less difference. Right? And there's actually a very simple reason, which is that we only have one body. Right? There's a limit to how much we can eat. There's a limit to how much space we can occupy. Right? So, success doesn't necessarily lead to happiness unless you're escaping poverty. However, it turns out that the reverse is true, which is that happiness leads to success, which at first is very surprising. But if you look at the research, if you're happy, you have an advantage at work. The first example, the obvious example, is sales. Right? So there are 2 guys selling you the same product at the same price. One guy always happy, the other guy always right? Always grumpy. Who you buy from? you buy from this guy, the happy guy. Right? I mean, all things equal. So it turns out that when it comes to sales, happy people sell 37% better. So it has been quantified. Right? Happy people are, according to the research, 31% more productive, 19% more accurate at tasks. They are likely to be healthier and more popular and do better at school. Right? It's fascinating. And so there's some studies, some fascinating studies around it. One has to do with optimism, which is related to happiness. And this was a study done by Marty Seligman. And so he was doing this work with this insurance company called MetLife. So MetLife has a lot of insurance agents, and a lot of them leave, right? So they have to figure out like what to do with this. How do we hire the best insurance agents and so on? So to become an insurance agent in MetLife, you have to take a test to test your knowledge of insurance. Then when you pass the test, you can sell insurance. So there are people who just fail the test, but they score very high in optimism. So Marty Seligman convinced MetLife to hire these people as an experiment, see what happens. And these people outsell the rest by 50%. Right? So emotional competency, right? Optimism, was the key factor to success in sales. So, given what I just said, everything I just said will be totally useless if happiness is something they can do nothing about. That you're born happy or you're not. You're not, sucks to be you. If that's true, then everything I say is not just useless, it's counterproductive. Right? Because it's like, okay, now I'm not happy, I'm not going to be successful. Right? Fortunately, it turns out that happiness is trainable. And the way it's trainable is that, how should I say it? Happiness arises from joy. So then the question, what's the difference? So happiness is defined as this. It's defined as a deep sense of flourishing that arises from an exceptionally healthy mind. Not a mood, not a fleeting feeling, not an emotion, but an optimal state of being. So that is defined as happiness. In contrast, joy is moment-to-moment pleasant emotional experience. Fleeting, emotional, pleasant. So the relationship between the two is this, is that happiness is something that's taken over time. Right? So I say I have a happy day. Right? And in that happy day, or I have a happy life, in that happy day or happy life, I have many moments of joy. So joy becomes the building block of happiness. So when you say you have a happy day, it doesn't mean that every moment is joyful. There are some moments that are not joyful. Right? For example, your wife dragged you to come to this talk. And you're, Sam, not joyful. But you think back, the day is not a bad day, happy day, for example. Right? However, there is no such thing as joyless happiness. Right? Because joy is the building block for happiness. And it turns out that access to joy is highly trainable. Therefore, if that's true, you can train yourself to access joy. And then through accessing joy, build happiness. And that's how you build, that's how happiness itself becomes trainable. And then once that happens, you learn to access joy, you learn to be happy, and then you'll be successful. You get everything. So that leaves us a question, how? How do you train to access joy? And it turns out they can do it in 3 simple steps. The first is something I call easing, putting your mind at ease. So what does that mean? Shall we try an experiment, by the way? Okay, it's going to be a 5-second experiment, and if you don't like it, sorry, it's only 5 seconds, so it's over very soon. So for 5 seconds, I'd like you to bring attention to the process of breathing. Just bring total but gentle attention to 1 in-breath and 1 out-breath. That's all. Sounds good? Okay, 5 seconds, begin now. Thank you for your attention. So that is easing, putting your mind at ease. Very simple, right? First thing you notice, by the way, everybody notice that when you do that, you bring total attention to the breath, you find at the end of it, 5 seconds later, you're a bit calmer, right? You feel a little bit better. then the question becomes, how is it that 5 seconds, one breath can make a difference? It's actually very simple. There is actually two reasons. One reason is physiological, one is psychological. The physiological reason being this is when you bring attention to the breath, you notice that you're breathing slower and deeper, right? And when you do that, you're stimulating your vagus nerve. And when you stimulate your vagus nerve, you're activating the reverse of the stress response. You're activating the relaxation response. And so in the first breath already, your heart rate slows down, your blood pressure goes down, your muscles start to relax. So that's why you feel calmer, more relaxed in one breath. That's the physiological effect. Psychologically, even more powerful. Psychologically, to regret, you need to be in the past. To worry, you need to be in the future. When you bring total attention to the one breath, you are being totally in the present. And by being in the present, you're not in the past or the future. Therefore, in that one moment of being present, you are free from worry and regret. My friends, freedom from worry and regret for the space of one breath. And it's like, if you're high achievers, I think that's most of you, right? It's like carrying worry and regret all day. So imagine being able to rest them for the duration of one breath. You carry again, right? You get the opportunity to recover, right? That's why it's so powerful. So first exercise for you. Try this every day, right? At least once a day, bring full attention to one breath, especially when you're stressed. See how that works. Oh, by the way, I can tell you a story. This exercise is actually very powerful. There's this, I read about this a long time ago, tennis players. What makes the best tennis players in the world? Or rather, is there something what distinguishes the top tennis players in the world from everybody else? And it turns out the top tennis player in the world has a very powerful skill, which is they are able to rest their body and mind between sets. So when they're playing tennis, in between sets, they are like 5 to 10 seconds, sometimes 15 seconds. And in between sets, a world-class tennis player can relax their body and rest their body and mind to the degree that when the next set begins, they can perform a high performance. And that's how they can sustain high performance. And that's how they win the Grand Slams. Right? So this technique that you just learned, don't look down on it. It's very powerful. It's literally game-changing. And by the way, I read about it a long time ago, and I never had the opportunity to meet a world-class player. And finally, I met this guy. His name is Novak. So I asked Novak. Novak, for those who don't know Novak, he's, I don't know, the best player in the history of the game or something. And Novak said, it is true. Not just it's true. Novak also said, he said, at my level, tennis is not a physical game. Tennis is a mental game. And the way to win is to keep calm and clear throughout the game. In addition to that, the practice you just did, calming the mind, has one other beneficial effect. And some of you, I'm guessing about 10 to 20% of you, without training, if you're doing it for the first time, you may notice, which is that when you bring full attention to the breath, for one breath, you may find that at the end of it, you are a little bit happier, right? There's a sense of joy that arises. For some of you, very subtle. For some of you, a little bit strong. And some of you, like, maybe most of you is like, bole, right? But with some practice, it becomes consistent, right? You can consistently access that joy, which is fascinating. So for me, it took me a while. And then once I kind of discovered it by accident, right? I was sitting down and suddenly I just feel joy emanating my whole body and mind. And then after a while, I find that I can access it reliably. Every time I sit, breathe, in 2 seconds, I can bring out the joy. And even after I can access it reliably, it didn't make sense to me. Like, why? Makes no sense. So I asked around, and I asked some of the great masters, and one of them gave me the answer that blew my mind. He said, very simple. The default state of mind is joy. Therefore, when you bring the mind to the calm and clear state, all you're doing is to bring the mind back to default, which is the joyful state. That's it. No magic, no mystery. blew my mind. Right? And the reason it blew my mind is because that statement was profoundly life-changing. What it suggests is that happiness is not something we need to pursue. Happiness is already there. We just have to learn to access it. So with that insight, later on I learned about this. There's actually a technical term. In Pali, the technical term is sukha, and I think in Sanskrit is sukh. And translated in this context, is translated as non-energetic joy. The type of joy that doesn't require energy. So sukha is a lot like the air conditioning sound in this room. You've been here for a while, but nobody noticed the sound of the air conditioning, right? The only time you notice is when you are quiet and pay attention. And once you do that, you realize that this sound is always there, has always been there. It's extremely sustainable. And it turns out that's true for sukha. So that sukha is a quality of mind. The mind by itself has that quality of quiet, non-energetic joy. But it's always there, but it's very subtle because it's non-energetic. However, when you learn to quiet down and pay attention, you can access it. And then after a while, it becomes a skill. Accessing it becomes a skill, and then you can access it on demand. And then because you can do that, you can always have access to joy on demand, 24/7. And once you can do that, it profoundly changes your life. Because now you do not need, your sense of joy, happiness is no longer entirely dependent on sensory pleasure and ego pleasure. Those are still good. It's still good to have good taste and good smell and so on. But they're not absolutely necessary anymore. You're no longer the prisoner. Now you also have an alternative source of joy, which is sustainable and independent of ego and senses. And then, so that's powerful in itself. And there's one more effect of that. Once you're able to access that, it raises the happiness set point. So what does that mean, happiness set point? We all have a happiness set point, right? So when nothing is happening, how do you feel? So when most people feel about Some people feel miserable. Some people feel happy. So that's your set point. When nothing's happening, that's how you feel. So for me, for most of my life, my happiness set point was misery. If nothing's happening, I was miserable. And then one fine day in my 30s, I realized that my happiness set point has gone to the other extreme. It's jolliness. If nothing's happening, I'm just so jolly. Something changed, and what changed was this practice. So, unbeknownst to me, that by doing this practice over time, my happiness set point just kept moving, creeping towards the other extreme. Right? So, yeah, yes, this profound impact on you. Just this one simple practice, easing the mind. So that's one. Step two, or the second practice, is inclining. Inclining the mind towards joy. So what does that mean? The word inclining here means mental inclination. And in the ancient text, mental inclination is compared to the slope of a mountain. When the mountain is sloped in a certain way, when water flows effortlessly in that direction. Same thing with the mind. If the mind is inclined towards certain states, then experience flows effortlessly towards a state. For example, if your mind is inclined towards anger, every second thing makes you angry, effortlessly. Right? However, if your mind is inclined towards joy, every second thing makes you happy, makes you joyful. So the question becomes, how do you change the inclination of mind so that it inclines towards joy? And it turns out the main practice for doing that is very simple. And it's so simple that even I can do it. And the practice is to just simply notice thin slices of joy. So the question is, what is a thin slice of joy? So let me give you an example. Pretend I've been speaking for a while, right? And then I get thirsty because I speak so much. And then I get some water. That was good. That was a thin slice of joy. It was thin on two dimensions. You were thin in the spatial and temporal dimension. So what does that mean? So spatial dimension means that it wasn't like, yay! It was like, it's kind of nice. Right? Temporal dimension is it lasted only about 2 seconds, maybe 3 seconds. 3 seconds of, yeah, nice. That amount of joy. The thing about thin slices of joy is that in day-to-day life, they happen a lot. Right? For example, every time you drink water, I guarantee you there's at least one moment of a thin slice of joy, at least one. Every time you eat, at least the very first bite, because you're hungry, there's a moment, oh, delicious. At least one moment, thin slice of joy. So if you look at it live, when you shower, at least the first, wow, sure, man. Right? There's so many thin slices of joy. We never notice them. So the practice here is to simply notice thin slices of joy. And if you do that, it becomes like a game. So pretend we're playing a game of counting blue cars. Right? So let's say we go out count number of blue cars for a whole day, and then whoever gets the highest number wins a prize. You know what prize you're winning? I was going to give you a bell, but I tell myself, no bell, please. So you got a Nobel Peace Prize. Yeah, I told a joke in front of, when there was a Nobel Peace Prize winner in the audience. She thought it was very funny. Nobel Peace, always, okay, class, yes. And then you notice something. So you play the game right, for a couple of days, right? And then you notice that after you stop playing the game, you still start noticing a lot of blue cars. Everywhere I go, there are blue cars. Never noticed that before. Now I see them all the time. Same here. Once you start noticing thin slices of joy, after a while you realize it's everywhere. So many moments of joy that we completely miss out. And so this practice, the first thing it does, already increases your happiness at no extra cost. Nothing, not a single thing in your life changes. Already you're happier because you start noticing all these thin slices of joy everywhere. But even more important than that, it does something else for you, which is that it starts to familiarize the mind with joy. And the word familiar is related to the word family. Right? So when your mind becomes familiar with joy, joy becomes like a member of family to the mind. Somebody you love, somebody you can count on, somebody who's always there for you. That relationship. So, and that's how eventually, through this simple practice, the mind inclines towards joy. And then after that, experience flows effortlessly towards joy. Okay, can I assign homework to everybody? Okay, homework. The next time you eat, the first bite of food, bring full attention to the moment of joy. Okay? Sounds good? Can I assign you one more homework? Okay, when you drink water, next sip of water, bring full attention to the moment of joy in experiencing the water. Sounds good? And you can think of your own examples as well, right? When you meet a new friend, there's a moment of joy. Right? You meet an old friend, moment of joy. So all these things, when you're with your kids, right? They say, oh, my kids are here. There's a moment of joy. You're holding hands with the kids falling asleep. So that so many moments. Just start seeing them. And the more you see them, the more they become available. So that's step number 2. How much time do I have? Okay, huh? I'm trying to keep my speech short so that we can have more time for Q&A. Okay, step 3. Step 3 is even more powerful, in my opinion, which is to uplift the mind with goodness. So let me give you an example. Loving kindness. Shall we do another 10-second exercise? So that's how you do 5. Now you're power already. You double to 10. Okay? So this is what I want you to do for 10 seconds. I like you to secretly identify 2 people in this room. Secretly, and then think to yourself, I wish for this guy to be happy. I wish for this person to be happy. Just think only, okay? Don't do anything. Don't say anything. Don't go like, Just thinking. Can? Okay, 10 seconds beginning now. Thank you, my friends. Do you notice you're smiling when you're doing that? Do you notice that to be on the giving end of a kind thought is intrinsically rewarding? It makes you joyful. And it's consistent. Like every time you do that, you feel a little bit of joy. So my friends, if what I just said is true, you just found one of the most powerful secrets of joy. Simply by thinking, I wish for that person to be happy, already you're more joyful. So if you do that a lot, you get a lot of joy. And it costs you nothing. Because you don't even have to do anything, just thinking. Even better, thinking is the most easiest thing to do. Every adult I've ever known in my life knows how to bring up a thought. Okay, everybody think of an elephant. Everybody can do that. So therefore, bringing up a thought is so easy. Therefore, if you can get an injection of joy simply by bringing up a thought, then you can have access to a lot of joy. And that thought is, I wish for this person to be happy. So how powerful is this? One time I was giving a talk on a Monday evening, and then the next day was Tuesday, was a work day. So I told the audience, I said, tomorrow work day, I give you homework. Homework is, every hour, on the hour, you spend 10 seconds wishing for 2 people outside your office to be happy, secretly. So you don't do like that. You don't do like just think. That's not embarrassing, right? Because nobody knows what you're thinking. So, okay, let's do that. Go back to work. See what happens. So I assigned the homework on Monday evening, and then on Wednesday morning, I received an email from a total stranger. And this person told me, she said, I hate my job. I hate coming to work every single day. But I went to your talk on Monday, I did the homework on Tuesday, and Tuesday was my happiest day in 7 years. Happiest day in 7 years. What did it take? It took 80 seconds worth of thinking. That's all it took. It's fascinating stuff. So try that. Okay? Can I assign this as homework to all of you, by the way? Okay, homework. Let's say today is Friday, huh? Oh, so sorry, Monday. Monday, when you go back to work. Okay, Tuesday. Or any other day. Any day you want to, maybe set an alarm clock or something. Every hour on the hour, just randomly wish for 2 people to be happy. See what happens. And then if it changes your life, email me, let me know. Okay? So this is just loving kindness. This is just one of the ways to uplift your mind, uplift yourself to happiness. Another is compassion. So what's the difference between loving kindness and compassion? Loving kindness is the wish for others to be happy. Compassion is the wish for others to be free from suffering. And there are a couple of differences. They sound the same, but there are some important differences. One of the differences is that compassion necessarily involves seeing suffering, because you're wishing for them to be free from suffering. So it's actually harder, because you must actually notice the suffering. You must take in the suffering. Another key difference is in compassion, naturally arises a motivation to do something, a motivation to relieve the suffering, where in kindness it doesn't always happen. So you would think that compassion will be a very difficult, very painful state, because you're accepting pain from other people. And so there was a fascinating study. This was done on this guy called Mathieu Ricard. He's French. He was one of those promising scientists from France. So he went to Pasteur Institute, which is one of the best universities. His PhD advisor was a Nobel laureate, and who only had 2 students, and he was one of the 2. Right? He was that smart, really smart kid. His major was molecular biology, and then after he finished his PhD, he decided to become a Buddhist monk. So after his PhD, he went to Nepal and spent like 40 years meditating intensively. And so when the Dalai Lama became interested in science, in the science of meditators, or science of meditation, guess who was the obvious subject? Right, Matthew. Right, 40,000 hours of practice, a true scientist with a PhD in the hard science, right, knows French, English, and Tibetan, knows the classics and knows hard science. So this guy. So they put him in a lab, and they didn't really know what they're expecting to find, because he was the first person with more than 10,000 hours of training to be put in the fMRI. And so they just asked Matthew, okay, Matthew, just meditate on compassion. So Matthew did that. It's compassion, compassion, compassion. And the story was like, when they looked at the numbers, they said, it's off the charts. His happiness was off the charts. 8 standard deviations from the mean. And so when they looked at this number, there was only one conclusion: equipment failure. So they took Matthew out, sorry, Matthew to recalibrate, something's wrong. And they did all that, put him back in, same result. And not just Matthew, other meditators later on, with more than 10,000 hours training, 10,000 hours of training, they produce the same level of happiness when they do compassion. It turns out that compassion is the happiest state ever measured in the history of neuroscience. And this is highly trainable. So if you practice things like kindness and compassion, then you also have a source of joy on demand. So how do you do that? How do you cultivate kindness and compassion and all that? What you just did just now, this exercise, when you wish for somebody to be happy, imagine doing that a lot. Imagine doing that 20 times a day, 30 times a day, for many days. What happens? What happens is it becomes a mental habit after a while, which means that every time you see a human being, that's the first thought. I wish for this person to be happy. That's the first thought. Why is that the first thought? Because it is a mental habit. For no other reason than because it's my habit. What happens? Habit becomes personality. Personality becomes character. Character becomes you. So eventually you become a kind person, simply by creating a mental habit. So that's a big claim. I want to make a bigger claim. And not all of you may agree with me. The bigger claim is this: that every saintly quality I can think of, kindness, love, gratitude, compassion, altruistic joy, whatever, every single one can think of, saintly quality, can be framed as a mental habit. Therefore, can be trained as a mental habit. Therefore, we can all train to acquire saintly qualities. And in doing that, we create a better world and we create more joy in ourselves. Right? Fascinating, right? So this is it. 3 easy steps to cultivating happiness and joy. First is easing. Second is inclining. Third is uplifting. And with that, you become a better person and you create a better world. So, do you want me to wrap up, or do you just want to? Okay, I'll wrap up. Okay. So, I wrote 2 books on this topic. I wrote a book on Search Inside Yourself, which is a topic is on emotional intelligence and mindfulness, or using mindfulness to cultivate emotional intelligence. And the second book I wrote was on joy. So basically, what I just told you, how to cultivate joy using mental practices. And the reason I do that, I have a very simple aspiration, which is to create the conditions for world peace in my lifetime. That's all. And I like to create I think the way to create the conditions for world peace in my lifetime is to scale inner peace, inner joy, and compassion worldwide. If you do that, we have conditions for world peace. And I'm hoping that joy, like cultivating joy, things I just told you, is one of the main vehicles. Because in cultivating joy, you find that there's a package. The package is inner peace, inner joy, compassion. You find that compassion, I think, is or rather global compassion, I think is the trigger for world peace. If compassion at a global scale, there will be world peace. However, compassion must be sustained with joy, inner joy. And inner joy must be sustained with inner peace. And therefore, once you talk about joy, the whole thing becomes a package. You can't talk about one without talking about the other 2. So, for example, what I just talked about, cultivating joy, involves compassion and inner peace. So I hope that through doing this work, through spreading this work, we will have inner peace, inner joy, and compassion worldwide. And together, we can create the condition for world peace in our lifetime. Thank you.
Did you enjoy the water?
Yeah, moment of joy.
His jokes are so corny. You know, it takes a lot of confidence to crack corny jokes. In front of an esteemed pseudo-intellectual audience. You know, this man, I got to read this out to you. Some of his achievements, it's incredible. Although he speaks like an Abing.
Don't have lah.
Yeah, you see? He was featured on the front page of the New York Times. His second book... Twice. Only twice. They are discriminatory. Your second book was an instant bestseller? Both. New York Times bestseller. All right. He delivered a TED Talk on compassion at the UN. He spoke at the White House about the development of kindness. This was before the current president. He met 3 United States presidents, Obama, Clinton, Carter. The Dalai Lama gave him a hug for his 40th birthday. China wasn't happy. And that's the root of all the problems we're having. President Carter gave him a standing ovation at one of his talks. And most importantly, he made Mom proud. I love the last line. And I think what we just saw in this man makes him too good to be real. The problem with many of us, especially those of us who are born and bred in Singapore, is that when things are so simple, we become cynical. Because whether it's our education system or just the air, we have come to love overcomplicating things because we feel that that's rigor. He's just taught us that rigor is at its best when it's simple. For example, it's extremely difficult for us to write a good executive summary. But to write 25 pages of rubbish is not difficult. You know, I mean, those of you who have tried writing a 2-page summary, executive summary that's compelling, is harder. What he just did just now was deceptively simple. To talk about things that are so broad, amorphous, and with conviction is not an easy thing, right? Talking about calculus is easier. It is, because it's quantifiable. You can break it down. So I must say that, I'm sure you'd agree with me, as a Singaporean, I feel exceptionally proud that one of our own has gone out there and done well in the right way. He paid me a lot. And this, even though he went to NTU to do his engineering.
Nobody's perfect, right?
Now,
yes, so it's true, I was an engineer, but in my defense, I was young and needed the money.
I must say that it must have been extremely difficult for you to try and convince people about why it's important to be happy. And that happiness has nothing to do with making money. There might be some correlation, but the causal connection is suspect, right? It must be difficult for you because you're talking about things that people, I'm not sure about the other countries, but people in Singapore don't really give too much of regard to. I mean, I'll give you a simple example, right? If you are in the art stream, you're seen as being a lesser being.
Okay.
No, and the hangover is still there. Have you seen this when someone says, I am doing triple science? Oh. I'm doing literature. It still happens. It still happens. I hear many of our leaders guilty of labeling subjects like philosophy, sociology, even history as soft options. So when we're living in an environment like this, and I hope the rest of the world is not like Singapore, but they probably aren't that different. How do you think you'll be able to achieve a measure of success in making people realize that happiness is important?
So my first surprise was how easy it was. I did not start by talking about happiness and joy. I started by talking about emotional intelligence and mindfulness, which was even harder. So I'll tell you how hard it is, how it's supposed to be. When my first book on mindfulness came out in France, my French publisher, his name is Fabrice. Fabrice told me he's gay. So he had to come out twice in his lifetime. The first time he came out as gay, the second time he came out as a meditator. The second time was harder.
Gay meaning he was happy?
No, gay as in homosexual.
Sorry. Okay, sorry. I didn't know that corny jokes are infectious. Okay.
Okay. So yeah, I mean, it was harder to come out as a meditator, right? So back then, it was like a ooh subject, right? Like ooh. And I was expecting a very skeptical reception, especially among my audience, which are the Google engineers. And I didn't find any of those problems. Like, so for example, I used to teach a 7-week class on Search Inside Yourself. So the second week was a full day of mindfulness. Mindful eating, mindful sitting, mindful whatever. And then at the first class, I talk about the science and everything. And my challenge to myself is how many % who came for first class will come for second class.
Second class.
Knowing that it's a full day of mindful sitting, mindful walking, mindful this, mindful that. And I was expecting 50%. I got 100%. Everybody came back. The first time I thought it was a fluke. The third time I knew it was not a fluke. And so I realized that what I did at the beginning was correct. So I did a few things. The first thing I did was I didn't sell the soft part, I sold the hard part. I sold success. So rather, another way to look at it, I appeal to self-interest. Right? So I didn't start with let's create world peace. I started with let's help you become successful. This will help you become successful. This will help you earn more money with peace, joy, compassion being the necessary and unavoidable side effect. And they sign me up, right? Because people they love to be successful. They don't mind world peace.
Yeah.
Right. So
Yeah.
So appeal to the self-interest. So I appeal to self-interest without a hidden agenda, because I do say out loud that I'm doing this for world peace.
Yeah.
So that's one. Another thing I did was languaging. My languaging is very precise. So for example, when people are teaching like emotional intelligence or mindfulness, they will say things like, everybody go deep into your emotions. And the engineers were like, what is deep? What is shallow? How do you measure? Right? So I use very precise terms. I say, develop a high-resolution perception into the process of emotion.
Okay.
Yeah. Even engineers can understand.
No. Only engineers can understand.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah, but I do.
Even your father is laughing at you.
My father is always laughing at me. No, he's laughing with me.
Okay.
But I do define it. So for example, this perception thing is on 2 dimensions, right? Spatial and temporal. Spatial means that you can detect tiny changes in the process of emotion. Temporal means you can do it in thin slices of time, real time. So I explain this out, and people get it.
Yep.
Right? So that's precision and language. The third thing that's really important is the science. Everything I say has basis in neuroscience or management science or something. Right? Has been studied, peer review. And finally, application, which was a little bit surprising even to me. So for example, we talked about kindness just now. And everybody knows kindness is intrinsically good. It's good for my soul. Like, yet, in class, that's not good enough. I have to say how we apply this at work. For example, if you have loving kindness, you go into a room, you look at everybody, you wish for them to be happy. What happens? It shows on your body language. And then it's reflected through mirror neurons in the other people. And then they find themselves liking you, and they don't really know why. But it makes the meeting goes better. And in the long term, they like you, they want to help you, you're more successful. And that is the application of loving kindness. Right? So these few things. And therefore, because I did all this, it became understandable, accessible, and practicable to everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's actually not that hard.
No, I think what you've just said makes a lot of sense, right? Because you have used the right language, and you connected with the known needs, the needs that people are aware that they have.
Yes.
You know, to bring them to a space where
Yeah.
they just realize that there are other needs too. You
Yes,
know.
that's right.
Now, do you think this will work with the political leadership in Singapore?
So definitely yes. So the reason I'm thinking is how best it will work in the leadership. I don't know yet. Right? I mean, all these techniques, right? They're all universally applicable, right? So if you look at like emotional intelligence, for example.
See, for a moment you're throwing a lot of smoke. No? You are very precise until this moment.
Okay. Because you almost get me in jail.
drink. I told you I'm going to have a lot more fun than you.
That's right. I do think so.
No, actually,
I mean,
that question is it's only partly in jest.
Can I tell a story? It's a fascinating story.
Okay, is it linked to the political leaders?
It's linked to at least one political leader.
Okay, all right.
But it's a good story, and I have his permission to tell you this story.
Okay.
His name is Jacob. Jacob is my friend. He also happens to minister in charge of Muslim affairs.
Yeah.
Right? So Jacob wants to learn to meditate. Right? So he asked me. Right? And we all know he's a Muslim leader, and I'm a Buddhist leader. He asked me, and I say, I'm always out of Singapore. So I know a friend who's in Singapore more than me. And his name is Father Lawrence Freeman. He's a Catholic priest.
Yeah.
He's famous for being Lee Kuan Yew's meditation teacher. And he's Christian.
Yeah.
Right? So I asked Jacob, can I have Lawrence teach you? And Jacob said yes, Lawrence said yes. And I reflected on it. It's like a Muslim leader asks a Buddhist leader for spiritual instruction. The Buddhist leader say, how about the Christian leader? The Christian leader say, and they both say yes. Like, it's like I think when a book about religious, not tolerance, religious peace is written, that is the first chapter.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that the PAP leadership are dominated by men like this. Good men, open-hearted, open-minded. Right? Which is why I didn't really know how to answer that question, because I didn't know how to fit that in. But I think they're all good people. Out of jail already, yeah? But no, I seriously believe that.
That sounded like a scripted answer. No, we'll let you go this time. But the reason why I asked that question, I was being slightly mischievous, sir. But the reason why I asked that question is there are two things that really many of us in Singapore are plagued by at this point in time, are affected by. One is, even though it hasn't happened in Singapore, all the killings, you know, it can be thousands of miles away, but it must affect us. It is affecting many of us. What we are seeing, especially when children are being killed, you know, and I think I'm sensing it. I could be imagining it, but I'm sensing a lot more people down, because it's almost as if we're fighting a losing battle against something that is not going to go away. So people are beginning to lose hope that we will see a better world for our children, you know, especially those of us who are parents. I think it does bother us. I have we both have 16-year-olds, and I can tell you, it keeps me awake at night, wondering what sort of a world my daughter is going to be living in 15, 20 years down, because it's not getting better, right? You know, the incline you're talking about is not towards joy, you know. The second thing that many of us have been affected by is 38 oxy rice. You know, I mean, it's consuming us, but not in a very positive way. You know, many of us are affected, not just about the house, but all other statements and allegations, and it is ugly. It's uncomfortable. It's displacing, right? So at this point in time, how do you think Singaporeans in general can find a way out of it?
Right.
How do you think? How do you think we can help to inject some positivity?
So I tell you a story concerning the first one about terrorism. I think last year or the year before, I don't remember. So Google was doing a documentary on a few Googlers for changing the world, Google employees. So I was one of those people. So they were doing...
Sorry, in case you all don't know, he was the pioneer team of Google. That's why he doesn't need to work. This thing called stock options? Okay.
Yeah.
Please.
I retired when I was 45 years old. So anyway, so Google was doing a documentary on me. And as part of this, so I did not know until the end. What they were doing, they went around the world looking for people who say I changed their lives. And they interviewed those people. And then at the end of the process, the team told me, you have to look at this one. You have to look at this guy's testimony. This is really powerful. So I went and I saw. It's a young Egyptian man. His name is Omar. And Omar, he says he used to be a radical, a religious radical, and with all the anger and everything. And then when he read my book, my first book, Search Inside Yourself. And after reading the book, he said he realized something important. He realized that people from other faiths have the right to live. And his whole worldview changed. So I asked Omar, like, what specifically in the book caused you to have the shift? And he said there's one specific exercise, just like me. Looking at a human being who is your enemy, somebody you hate, and just remind yourself, this person is a human being just like me. This person wants to be happy, just like me. This person wants to be free from suffering, just like me. And suddenly the hatred goes away. Right? So Omar is a changed person. And so if we have 10,000 Omars, 100,000 Omars in the world, then there's a shift in the world. So it's not impossible. And so I'm hoping that my work, in starting with self-interest, helping people become successful, and then very quickly moving towards changing people's mind, people's hearts, will spread widely. In my institution, our goal is 1 billion people in 20 years. 1 billion people. Yeah. Then we have the hope for world peace. So that's one piece. About Oxley, 38 Oxley Road. Oxley Rise, okay. I think that the biggest issue there is what I call assignment of intention. So what does that mean? So when we act, when we behave, we know our intention. But we don't know other people's intention. We infer or we assume the intention based on the effect of their behavior on us. So you say something and then I assume, well, he hates me. Yeah. And the problem is it happens unconsciously. And then not just that, the mind, because it happens unconsciously, the mind assumes, the mind thinks that assumption is actually fact. Right? So in this particular case, I can see both sides of the argument. Right? I can see old man wants it demolished. I get it. I can also see why we should keep it, because it's our heritage and so on. Right? And so I can see good intentions for both sides. The problem happens when there's an assignment of bad intention. You're doing this because some evil intention. Yeah. And then it's assumed, and it's taken as fact. It's not questioned. Then you have problems. So the way I would solve this is if we can get them to talk together, like, I don't know, like Chinese New Year or something, right? They're coming together anyway.
Chinese New Year is quite far away.
Yeah. Christmas, Hari Raya.
Bring all
Monday.
together, yeah.
Go to Jacob's house.
Yeah, and have iftar.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah. So at Jacob's house, I think the
So you want
the
Jacob to
conversation
lose his job?
Sorry?
You want Jacob to lose his job?
No, Jacob just provide food, man. The conversation, I think, should begin with testing the assumptions around intention. Yeah. Say, Long, is this really your intention? Right? And then, based on that, then a real conversation can begin.
Apart from that, there's something else that I think might hold the solution. It's something you said in an interview. I marked it. Let me find it. Yeah, this is an interview you gave to Today Online some time back.
Okay.
The question you were asked is: you make finding joy seem like a skill that you can practice. That sounds like hard work, right? How real is this emotion? So your answer essentially was that you make it normal over time, just through repetition, right? Yeah. So that's the first part of, I think, the solution. The second part of the solution is in an interview you gave somewhere else, to the Globe and Mail, and I think I mentioned this to you earlier. I quote you, "Given human nature, I realized that I would have to somehow align peace, joy, and compassion with success and profit. If I went around the world spreading a message of peace and compassion, people would applaud, and nothing would happen. But if I brought success and profit into the picture so that people realized this is how to become more successful, the message would spread." See, what I'm trying to say is all this points to the fact that you need to make this whole effect of joy, compassion, less amorphous and esoteric.
Yes,
Because in the current state of mind, it's not going to work.
correct.
But as individuals,
Yes.
you also talked about compassion, right?
Yes, correct.
This is what they can do, the parties involved can
Yes,
do.
yes, this three
right?
was understandable, accessible, practicable.
Yeah.
Yes.
And for us, what we need to do
Yes.
is the compassion part.
Yes.
You know, I don't know whether you experienced it. If you're involved in WhatsApp chats, you know, group chats, everybody is an expert, everybody is condemning everybody else, and it's so uncharitable. You know what I'm saying? Without taking sides, everybody is just so angry. And that anger actually sort of builds up over time. And I realize it in my own school chat. You know, I mean, my ex-classmates coming together. You know, negative just spreads negative. And I think we can get out of that vicious cycle by doing exactly what you said.
That's right.
You know,
Yeah.
putting yourself in the other person's shoes and be a little bit more compassionate.
Yeah.
Right? And actually, if we can, as Singaporeans, stop talking about this issue over time and let it go,
Yeah.
it might have a positive effect on the
Yes.
outcome.
Right. Yeah. So my.
Would you agree with that?
I totally agree because my experience with WhatsApp group is entirely different from yours. Yeah. my WhatsApp group, they are very positive.
Which school did you go to?
Maybe in the wrong school. So I think it's the nature of the groups I'm in. So one group, we are working with the Vatican. You might have heard about this. We started this thing called the Vatican,
Yes.
the Laudato Si Challenge. We're working with the Vatican
yeah.
to try to create companies to solve for
That's right.
climate change and other big problems. So that group very positive because the people there are those are the people.
Yeah.
The other group are the group about it's entirely different religion. I'm in the Buddhist group, and we're talking about various Buddhist issues.
Yeah.
Yeah, so in both sides, we are very positive. So maybe if your groups are like focused on creating goodness in the world, then maybe you should create
How
those
can
groups.
that... See, I think that's a great idea. I mean, in many of these issues, talking about negativity continues to make that issue negative, right? Even if you're saying the truth, even if you're factually correct. I mean, I'm sure we have all experienced it. You go on a downward spiral, right? Now, how can this sort of turn it? I mean, I'm just taking
Right.
that one example, right?
Right. So it appears to be from the experience of my groups is don't add on. Don't
Yeah.
add on the fire. So instead of adding onto the fire, just add on heart. So, I'm so sorry you feel this way. Oh, okay. I'm so sorry that this happened to you. Or just heart or whatever. Right? So, and then the tension just dissipated.
No, frankly, it may sound very superficial, but these things actually do make a difference. You know, the negative language. I mean, let me, I don't know whether you heard, you know, the former Indian president, Abdul Kalam, was known for positivity. And he shared and I'm going to paraphrase, he shared this very interesting anecdote. He said that when he was a kid, he used to love climbing the mango tree, which can grow pretty tall, right? And his partner in crime was the girl living in the next door house. So they both used to climb this tree, right, to a point where it's pretty high. And then at some point they realized they climbed too high and they froze. You know, it can happen, right? They froze. Now both their parents came out and panicked, right, because they were really high, you know. The girl's mother shouted at her to say, if you don't hold it strongly enough, you're going to fall for sure. Abdul Kalam's father apparently told him, son, if you hold tight, you won't fall. He didn't, she did. I mean, it could be because she was weaker, you know. But the point he's making is, one focused on you won't fall, the other focused on if you're not careful, you will fall. Factually, both are talking about the same thing, right? But the language that you talked about actually does make a difference in the way the outcome sort of presents itself.
That makes sense. It makes sense, and I think it's beyond, not just a language, it's the personal experience.
Yeah.
So the reason I can talk about all these things with so much confidence and so much positivity
And conviction.
Because I went through that myself.
Yeah.
Right. So if everybody had done those practices and they've noticed a change in themselves, then everybody is an ambassador to this work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a way.
So, with that interesting comment, let me throw it open to the floor. I'm sure there are many comments. Feel free to share your own personal experiences, but try and avoid making speeches, right? Because there are quite a lot of you here, and it's quite an enthralling and very relevant topic. So please, can we have your questions or comments? See, I told you, Singaporeans are, even after this fierce warm-up. Come on, I'm sure we have some questions or comments. Otherwise, I'll have to ask your father to ask the first question.
Yeah. In engineering school, the first thing they teach you is it works better when you turn it on.
And you had to go to NTU to study that.
Toshe.
Yeah, it's working.
Not anymore.
No.
Does this work? Oh, awesome.
It certainly is working.
Right.
Awesome.
Hi, my name is Elisha, and I'm the founder of Tech Ladies, and I also work at Facebook. So my question is, how important is happiness when you compare it to fulfillment? I'll give you a story. So my passion project is to help women to learn how to code. We do a bunch of programs, and we have been pretty successful in training 23 women, of which 7 got internship or are hired as junior software engineers. Awesome. But the way to get there sucks, right? I eat 3 meals at my desk, and it's just a lot of work, a lot of stress.
Yeah.
I don't feel the little moments of joy, but in the grand scheme of things, I feel fulfilled, and in some way I feel happy. So how do you compare between happiness and fulfillment?
Okay. I'll answer that part slightly later, but I want to go to another slightly different topic. Remind me if I forget about fulfillment and joy. When doing anything non-trivial, especially difficult things over a long term, as far as I can tell, there are only 2 ways to do it. And I haven't thought of a third way. And 2 ways are this. The first is discipline. Right? I force myself to do this. Even like, for example, daily exercise, whatever that is hard that you need to do every day. Turns out that discipline is very expensive neurologically. So there's a fascinating experiment that showed that, which is, the control, this experiment, the control group is, you go into a meeting room and you do math problems. Then you get out, okay. So there's a control group. The experimental group, they come in, they see a delicious looking cake in the room. And then the person tells them, this cake is for the next group, please don't eat this cake. Okay, so they just do the math problems. And the math problem suffers, right? Because the brain, the prefrontal cortex is saying, don't eat the cake, don't eat the cake, don't eat it. And it takes away your processing power. Right, so it's neurologically very expensive. And therefore, when you look at discipline, almost always discipline is outsourced. Right? It's outsourced to somebody impose a discipline on you. Right? For example, a coach or a boss or whatever. So this is method number 1. Method number 2 is what you call fulfillment. What I call fun. Right? You do it because you want to. You want to for one of many reasons. Because it's meaningful. Because it is joyful. Or something. It's fulfilling. Right? So these are the 2. And so what you identified, what you call fulfillment, is skillful. Skillful in doing that. In fact, it's skillful, I think, in any job. In any job, if you can find meaning, purpose, or greater good, that is the best. Especially if there's a greater good that is important to you. Women's rights or whatever it is. And so back to that specific question, joy and fulfillment, I think that they are not mutually exclusive. I think the best is to have both. So remember that, like I said, fun is a motivating factor. So for myself, everything I do, those big things I do, none of them have any real success rate. Everything I do, I thought the success rate would be probably 0. I thought I would fail at it. But to me, the goal is important. It's meaningful to me, right? So I focus on a few things. One of the things I focus on is having fun while doing it. The other thing I focus on is getting the right allies. Right? So like telling people, this is what I'm doing. Like people say, whoa, this is cool. Can I help you? Right? So you gather allies. And so through doing that, I find a lot of fun in doing it. And if I fail, I have fun.
And less lonely.
Less lonely, yeah. So main message is not orthogonal. Try to have both.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
But it's a tough one. In fact, one of the questions that's coming through Pigeonhole is along those lines. And can we have the question up, please? How to stay happy when we are constantly challenged with demands in life? I mean, this is put very broadly, but all of us have tremendous amounts of challenges in life, you know. And I just want to share this. I mean, I am involved in SINDA, Singapore Indian Development Association, and in the course of the work, I went to this home where I was reading to a child, and I came out depressed, and I have no idea how they're going to be happy, right? The father is a carpet cleaner, earning $700, 3 children, 10, 9, and 5. Mother, his wife, has stage 4 cancer. There's not a single furniture in the house. The kids are studying on the floor. Okay, and I mean, we can help to buy furniture, but that's just one part. But I mean, it goes back, I mean, when you are in this sort of a situation, I mean, how is it possible for the person to even think of joy? You know, I mean, how do you get out of that?
There are 2 big pieces to that. One on the big level, one on the individual level. And if you don't mind, I'll talk a bit about both.
Please.
On the big level, you notice when you put up my slide early, it's still there, right? I'm doing two major things.
Yeah.
I'm chairman of Silly, Search Inside Yourself Leadership, Silly. I named it. And,
Very silly.
Yeah, very silly. And I'm also co-chair of 1 Billion Acts of Peace. So, and there's a reason I'm doing this both. So the story I just told you about creating conditions for world peace is actually only half the story. The way I see it, there are 2 necessary conditions for world peace. They are both necessary and insufficient. And combined, I think they're necessary and sufficient. The first is inner peace, inner joy, compassion worldwide. I call this global enlightenment. There's a second one, which is ending poverty, injustice, and environmental destruction in the world. And I call this global action. And the reason I call this global action is I think these problems can only be solved if we all work together. And that's why we started this 1 Billion Acts of Peace. We did this with 13 Nobel Peace Laureates. Now there are 15. A few more join us. And we're trying to start a movement to begin a 1 billion acts of peace so right now in today's world, not taking action is the norm. Taking action is the exception. We want to flip that so that taking action is the norm. Right? And so then with the momentum of 1 billion, then we begin to change the world. And everybody is taking action. We can solve for poverty, injustice, and environmental destruction together with inner peace, inner joy, compassion. Then we have the conditions for world peace. So that's a big picture. Implicit in the big picture is something I talked about earlier, in a small picture, which is that if you go for that, poverty is miserable, right?
Yeah.
To go from poor to not poor makes a huge difference in life.
Yeah.
So part of the story has to be we all have to help each other, right? So I'm in a sense I'm a socialist because I do believe that governments have a role to play to help everybody. So on the individual level, so first that's that piece. There's another piece, and it's harder to describe, but I'll talk about it from a practice perspective, which is that when we practice the joy practices, the 3 practices I talked about. Anyone remember them? Yeah, easing, inclining, uplifting. If we do that, there are 3 effects. The first effect, the obvious one, is that positive experiences become even more positive. Right? Because we see them more, we pay attention to them. The second one, slightly surprising, is that neutral experiences start to become positive. So, for example, drinking water used to be neutral, it's just water, nothing unusual. After a while, it becomes whoa. And then after a while, something happens, which is gratitude. Right? You stop taking things for granted. And after a while, something even more profound happens, which is you notice the absence of suffering.
Yeah.
Right? So there are moments where I'm not in pain. My whole body right now, not in pain. Then normally you don't notice. How many people here have a toothache? Nobody. How many people here did not notice you have a toothache until I asked? Nobody, right? So when I have a toothache, I say, wow, if I don't have this pain, I'll be so happy. I go to the dentist, this problem gets solved. 3 days later, I forget to be happy. So if we have the mind where we never forget that right now I'm not in pain, there's a source of joy in there. And these practices, they create that mind. So neutral experiences become joyful. And then there's the third effect, which I think even more powerful, which is that painful experiences become manageable. And the reason it works is that I find that joy and pain are mutually insoluble. So, okay, what does that mean? I'll give you my experience. My experience, there were times when I was in pain, in emotional pain. And then every now and then, every day, in fact, every day, a couple of times a day, I experience unadulterated joy in the midst of pain. Bully you, like, makes no sense, right? It's like one moment I want to die. Then next moment, I have unadulterated joy. And nothing happened, I just take a walk. Life is good. And then next moment, I'm in pain again. Like, I thought I was going crazy, right? And I realized that what happened was that if your joy is strong enough, you can coexist in the midst of pain. And that became oasis in the middle of a desert. And that's how I survived those periods. And then I realized later on that it's not even, how should I say it? I realized it's not just me. And the person I learned it most from is this woman called Rigoberta Menchú. She's a Mayan. She won the Nobel Peace Prize. She's the only Mayan who ever won the Nobel Peace Prize. And you see her, she's a wonderful, wonderful human being, always happy, always warm. She's, hello, how are you? Always very nice, always joyful. But if you spend an hour with her, and she's very honest, she's very open. Right? You spend an hour with her, immediately you can tell, this woman has so much pain, even today. It's like, wait, how come? How come there's so much joy and so much pain in one person at the same time, right? And then I realized that she's practicing what I was talking about. So if you know her story, and by the way, this is not unique to her because every Nobel Peace Prize winner went through trauma. That's how they won a Nobel Peace Prize. Sad but true. So her father was burned alive. Yeah. Her mom was murdered, raped, murdered, kidnapped, raped, murdered. And they knew it was coming. The mom knew it was coming, asked the daughter to leave, she stayed. So she went through that. Brother was murdered, and he lost her son. It's like, if any one of those events happened to us, happened to me, I'll be devastated. I'll be like, I'm not doing this anymore. But all these things happened to her, all that pain she's still holding, and yet she still has all that joy, and she's still serving the world today. And then as I got to closer to her, I realized that she has been using her joy, because her practice is so strong, she's using her joy to contain her pain. Yeah. And the way I visualize it is like putting a plaster around a fracture. Yeah. And it does two things. First, it prevents further damage. Second, it allows healing to happen over time. And that's what I see in her. She's having that joy to contain all her pain, and so that there's no further damage, and over time it heals. And that's how she can function and do her work while honoring her pain. And I'm sorry, slightly deviating from the topic.
No. To me, I'm not sure. To me, you're making a lot of sense. Because if I can just close, 1 minute, if I can just close the loop on that story, what you're saying making a lot of sense of what I witnessed. Because I felt a lot more sorrow for them than her.
Yeah.
Because every time I would go there to read to the children, she would receive me, the mother who had 4th stage cancer, she's passed away by the way, she would receive me with a huge smile and say, chapati? And she would make this chapati with so much of joy, even though she knew that she was going to die in the next 6 months. because they didn't have enough money to go for expensive treatments. And she did die in 4 months, right? She knew that she's going to leave her kids, whom she loved, but I think that was joy.
Yes.
I mean, I didn't see it until you just defined it.
Yes.
I think that's how she survived, because
Yes,
she
precisely.
can't sort of get around the fact that she's going to die. Then the question is, what do I do until that point when I expire? You
Yes.
know?
Beautiful. And you notice one other thing in your story. You notice she was making chapati for you.
Yes.
That is the joy. Her
Yeah.
joy is service.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
To make me happy.
That's right,
Yeah.
precisely. So in the midst of pain, I think the best joy is a joy from service.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, good evening, Mr. Tan. My name is Iwi. I'm currently doing my master's at the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. I refer to one of your interviews with Gong Ming San Pokaksi Monastery
Okay.
in the Awaken magazine, and you mentioned that you want to revive the importance of early Buddhism in all schools,
Yes.
as many people have lost touch
Yes.
with the roots.
Mhm.
It appears that you look forward to reviving compulsory religious education, religious knowledge.
all schools of Buddhism, sorry, not all schools in general.
Okay,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Nowadays, the fact is that many youths shun religion. How do you feel religion, or for this respect, Buddhism, can be made exciting, attractive to young people? That's my first question. The second
Right.
question is that we also understand you're one of our adjunct lecturers.
Yes.
When can we start seeing you teaching in our school? Thank you.
Very paiseh. Thank you.
That's
Yeah.
why he's adjunct.
That's why. That's why I'm a junk professor. If I was a good professor, it'd be different. Okay, so the adjunct professor thing. So the thing is, I'm always usually I'm back during this time of year, which we are off school. So which is why I haven't been able to teach. We'll see.
He teaches during the school break.
That's right. In the future years, I'll try to make that work. Okay, so the first part, in my mind, there is a separation between, there's a difference between spirituality and religion. So what's the difference? Religion, I define as belief in and or worship of one or more gods. So that's religion. Spirituality, I define as seeking within, and through seeking within, going beyond self. So there's a selflessness. And so I'm guessing that is a universal definition of spirituality. Every spiritual person has that experience, seeking within, going beyond self. And if you look at them, I think that they are related, they're closely related, but they're not the same thing. There are a lot of religious people I know who are not spiritual. There are a lot of spiritual people I know who are not religious. Right? And in my opinion, and I think this could be wrong, I think spirituality is a lot more attractive. Right? And also a lot more useful. And you may disagree with me. If you disagree with me about religion, most likely you're right and I'm wrong. Because I don't have enough wisdom to appreciate God or gods. Right? But I do appreciate spirituality. And so I think that the way I define spirituality, I think that it is attractive on multiple dimensions. The first is that it is conducive to happiness. Because it's about searching in, and going beyond self-service is a happy thing. Compassion is a happy thing. So it's also good for success, right? Because if you are a leader, for example, and all you can think of every day is service to your people, you're a much more successful leader, right? And it's good for the world. So part of my work is to try to promote spirituality, with or without religion. I mean, with religion, okay. Without, also okay. But I want to stress that spirituality is I want to make it understandable, accessible, practicable. So that's my work. And then specific case of Buddhism, I have other ideas, right, because I'm Buddhist. And so one of my ideas is what you just said. I'm trying to, sorry for, this is slightly technical. I'm trying to revive the importance of the oldest part, the early Buddhism, within Buddhism itself. The other thing I'm trying to do, this is a big project, this is my main project, is the democratization of enlightenment. So in Buddhism, there's this concept of enlightenment, and of enlightenment there are 4 levels. The lowest level is something called stream entry, Sotapatti. And they're all very well defined. And I want to make the lowest level understandable, accessible, and practicable. And to do it by demystifying it, and do it by creating science around it. And hope that if I'm successful by the time I die, this will be widely practiced, because it's spiritual and not religious.
Yep.
And by the time I die, there'll be 1 million people who achieve that level of enlightenment in the world.
But I guess what I'm hearing is to slowly remove the label of religiosity from it.
Not remove, but make it independent
Make
of.
it independent of.
Yes, spirituality.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of religious people who are spiritual. And I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, please.
I love your message, and I think, how can I take this to my children? And they'll say, I heard Meng, and they'll ignore me. And my office mate, same thing. So how do we carry this on to other people and sort of spread the message effectively?
How old are your children?
29 and 26.
Oh, okay, adult children. Okay, adult children is easier. Yeah, teenagers are wapiang. In general, my opinion, and again, you could disagree with me, the only real way to do it is by example. Right? So live that life, and then if you want to, you can talk about it. So number one, live that life. But if it's something that you learned, not just from me, but like from anybody, and it's helpful, it's useful to talk about it to everybody. I'm just thinking whether I should tell this story. Okay, I'll tell a story. Sorry, so many
Is that a
stories.
dirty joke? Or
No lah, we got dirty joke.
Okay. Knowing you, I can't tell.
So search inside yourself. When I started search inside yourself, it became, how should I say? I started without authorization from Google, by the way. Right, I just went ahead and did it. And then eventually I got Google involved, and they allowed me to run a class, or a pilot class. So I got 50 of my best friends to come in. And then very soon I ran out of best friends. So, however, the class was feeling like crazy. Like it became very quickly the most popular class in Google. And the reason it became so popular was because everybody tell all their friends, I went to this class called Search Inside, and it changed my life. Right. And so it's both. It's that it changed my life, and these things are available. So start with your own practice, allow it to change your life, and then tell them where to find it.
Thank you.
Thank you. I should start plugging my books, huh?
Yeah.
Okay, buy my book. Both of them.
Hi, Chade-Meng. My name is Yong Yu. I'm your year, Wachong. You are S6, I'm S7.
S61.
I'm S73.
Okay, go get a room, guys.
I think this is typically Chade-Meng.
Okay.
When you were in college, you were like that. So you're always ahead of a time. In 1987, only Apple just came out, and there was no internet, no nothing, and you're way ahead. And right now, you're still way ahead. And I hope you continue doing the same.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm a medical doctor myself, so I can see where this is coming from, and you have nicely put it in a nutshell, what joy, happiness should be. In my own practice, I coined up an acronym myself so that I thought I'd just share it, and this is the right place to share it. I myself is Catholic, so I think what is important in happiness, joy, and mindfulness is number one is communication. We should always communicate to our loved ones, whoever it is. Number two is hope. When there is hope, there'll be joy. When there's no sense of hope, there'll be despair, right? And third is not to react, but to reflect. And this is exactly what you said just now. Take time off, don't react. A lot of us are very reactive, you react to statements, comments, etc.
Right.
But to sit back and reflect.
Yes.
Okay. Next thing is that having arrived at your level, we should try to inspire inspire other people around us, and also to give individuals the space, space to think. You know, those who are oppressed, those who are poor, give them space. And lastly, time. Like you said, time will heal all wounds. So I summarized it as I use my own mnemonics, so that's Christ. So communication, hope,
Very
not to react, reflect,
Yeah.
inspire, space, and time. And I totally agree with you. You must go right down to the bottom
Yeah.
before you go up.
Yeah.
And that's where the true happiness is. So don't give your kids too much things in life. Make them suffer a bit, and I think that will be the best. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, very interesting. Give joy by making them suffer.
That reminds me of a story. I mean, the Christ thing, I mean, it's beautiful. And it reminds me of another story, if you don't mind me telling.
Oh, go ahead.
So a couple of years ago, I spoke in Korea. And then I was speaking at this, it's a financial group, right? And then the vice chairman introduced me and so on. And he's a known, very staunch Christian. And they told me beforehand. So I was there, he introduced me. And then I left, they sent me to the green room, and he continued speaking to his people. And what, by accident, the headset we had from the previous day, we forgot to return. So we have it, and then we found out it's still working. So the person on my team was putting it up. So we know what this guy was saying, like literally behind my back.
Yeah.
Because I was in the green room. So it was fascinating. So we know what you're saying, and it was fascinating. So this person, the vice chair, he told the room, he said, it's very obvious from this guy, it's very obvious he's Buddhist. And you all know me, you all know I'm Christian. And everything he just said, I agree with him 100%. So this is the power of truth and love. Right? It's universal. And once you open your mind, open your heart to see it, everybody can benefit, and then we all can come together in peace and harmony.
But you know, obviously from what your Hwa Chong classmate highlighted, you are a more evolved human being.
Bola,
You know?
偏家啦.
I mean, looking at you, one wouldn't say so, but after hearing what you say, I mean, come on, seriously, you're a lot more evolved than most of us, you know, because most of us do react. Including myself, most of us react. We've got raw anger. We hit before we think. I mean, look, most of us, let's be honest, we are guilty of that. With whether it's our family, our home, our children, our spouse, you do it, right? So I don't know how. I mean, cognitively, what you're saying makes a lot of sense. I don't think there's a soul here who thinks that what you're saying doesn't make sense. I guess the challenge is, how do you translate that which we agree with cognitively to action that is consistent and persistent?
I can tell
how do you do that?
Very easy.
Yeah lah.
Yeah. lah. So remember earlier the exercise you did, like bring full attention to the breath. So do the exercise, and then every time your attention wanders away, bring it back. That's all. Bring it back. And why do that, right? Because every time you bring back wandering attention, it's like doing one bicep curl for the brain, specifically the prefrontal cortex, right? So if you do a lot of this, you become strong, right? If you do a lot of this part becomes strong. And what happens after that, you start to gain a certain mastery over attention. And when you do that, one of the very first effects, which is very powerful, is precisely what I just said. You know, there's a very powerful saying, Viktor Frankl. He said, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And the space lies of freedom and power to choose a response. Right? So the ability, the mastery of attention, allows you consistent access to that space between stimulus and response. And therefore, that's how you can respond skillfully. So then the next question, how long it takes to get a practice, right? The answer will surprise you. According to the research, 100 minutes. 100 minutes already you can measure the impact.
The change in behavior.
Yeah, you can measure. 100 minutes of doing it, so like 2 hours-ish, right? And there are 2 independent studies that point to it, and each one fascinating on its own. So one of the studies is, there are 2 studies, but I will tell one study and talk about one data point that I noticed. So the study was on GRE scores. So in America, to go to graduate school, you need to take an exam called GRE. Right? So in this experiment, the control group, they took the GRE, And then the experimental group, they did 10 minutes of this thing, mindfulness of breathing, for 10 minutes a day for 2 weeks. So they had 140 minutes of practice. Lifetime, right? They've never done it before in their life. So there's a lifetime of practice, 140 minutes. 140 minutes, it improved their GRE scores.
Wow.
Yeah, so every parent here go like, wow, go back. So that's one example of 100-ish minutes. You can measure changes in the. The other one was from my own class. In my class, there's a very big man, and he's a former Marine, bad temper and so on. And just within a few classes, he found the ability to not say something nasty to his mother-in-law.
Wow.
Change his life.
Do you know?
you want that?
No. I'll have to go to heaven. But this is a great marketing tool.
Mother-in-law.
The mother-in-law factor. I'm telling you, demand will exceed supply, for sure.
Okay.
You know? But I think what you said does make sense, because I think for many of us, that's the challenge. We know that we shouldn't, but we do it. You know? And then for guys, you know, we end up in the doghouse. You know?
Yeah.
But I think we need to wrap at this point. I'm just wondering whether there are any. Yes, please. Any other questions?
There's
Yes.
one over there.
If you could get to the mic, we could have both questions together, and then if you don't mind, you can answer them together.
How much time do I have? Like 2-3 minutes kind of thing?
About 5.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes.
Mr. Tan,
Hi.
moderator, good evening to everyone.
Good evening.
Mr. Tan,
Sorry, your name.
Adeline here, I'm
Adeline.
a guest here tonight. I think I need to seek some advice from you, see how you see in your opinion in life. Being so successful, I believe that you're almost already touching heaven. But do you have any situational experience in your life before that, not about studies, that you feel that you have, regretted not doing something, or that maybe your personal friends around you who are even doing much better? I'm not sure, I want to quote, there's a Chinese say, 人比人气死人, and because of this, you can be, all your life, you can always, people can see that you're happy, but you're always masquerading a face, but actually you're always trying to overcome, to stop comparing with people, and also to move on with life, and not to regret that, I should have started my business venture 10 years ago. Maybe I own 10 companies from my Madam Tan or my Mr. Friend or whatever thing, or maybe my neighbor owns, how many houses already? Maybe I'm a bit too slow. I can't catch up, and forever. And you know that the lifestyle in Singapore is so great. It's number one now, and everybody is, before you close your eyes, your neighbor is shifting to some of the bungalows and all that. And you feel that. 是不是 you're too behind, and how, if you are not able to break open this break point already, cannot move on, you can't do anything, you can't rob a bank or whatever things, you can't do that anymore, it's too late, you can't be doing all that, you want to be happy.
What's the question?
How do you overcome
Okay.
comparison and not to regret and move on with life happily?
Comparison and regret. Okay,
Sure.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Question?
Yes.
My name is Madhavan. I'm super excited to see you in person. I did my PhD with mindfulness apps, and I interviewed so many participants, and I found that getting into the habit of practicing anything, it's very difficult. And I just want to bring that up first. People know that mindfulness practice is good for them, the same way like being kind or compassion is good for them. The difficulty is with getting that into your day-to-day activities. So 2 things. First, I want to say sorry to you because I was very skeptical when I read your book. To have got that simple ways to get this, I'm still a little bit skeptical, but I can see the passion and I can understand where you're coming from. So, sorry for that. Thanks for bringing it along. It's really cool stuff. Now, the question is, I know you start with success as a motivation towards inner peace and you can take it take it to global effects. But my question is, when we have success as a motivation, won't people try to commercialize these beautiful things of loving kindness, compassion, mindfulness, and so on? There is already a concept called MEC mindfulness, where people in military who kind of fight for so many different things. They practice mindfulness these days to maybe target someone mindfully.
Right.
the same way, when you started with an example of getting into a meeting room, starting with loving kindness, so that you connect well with people, so that you get successful with what you wanted to. Don't you think there could be a commercial touch to that eventually? And that's kind of makes me think where world is going with when we look for different kind of motivations to even for these beautiful things in life.
Right.
So, sorry, I don't quite understand your question. So are you suggesting that it may not be as pure? There may be commercial motivations?
Yes.
Or
I'm just asking, I want to know his opinion about, these aspects getting commercialized when we have success as the motivation.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So these are big topics. So I guess address the subset of that if you don't mind, because I ran out of time. And for this, I'll tell you a story. So this happened in, I think in Iraq. A bunch of soldiers, American soldiers, heavily armed. I think it's a platoon of them. And then there was something that happened. I can't remember exactly what happened, but this platoon ended up being surrounded by an angry mob. And the worst thing is the mob is unarmed. They're unarmed, they're angry, and they're moving towards the soldiers. What to do? Right? Whatever option you can think of, they're bad options. So, but the commander, very young man, he's very, 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 very wise. He looked at it, he told all his men, everybody, point down your gun and smile. So they started smiling. And then the mob stopped advancing, and after a while, they dispersed. And my friend, that is why we teach soldiers mindfulness, for that reason. Because soldiers, especially warriors, are the people who want war the least. And so it's a common misconception that warriors are the fight. Warriors sin to fight. They hate it more than anybody else. Right? So warriors, if they can, they want the most peaceful option. And so if we teach them mindfulness, and not just mindfulness, and you correctly are right, not just mindfulness, and also compassion, the heart practices, kindness. Combine that, and with the pause, right? The ability to think, to calm the mind on demand and think, then sometimes you can get the best option, like this guy. So this is it. And also the other aspect, commercialization, is a big topic. I'll just give a tiny summary. I think that based on this story and others, I think there are ways to commercialize it in a way where it's good for growth and doesn't water down the Dharma. And it's a big topic, but we can talk about it later.
Thank you.
Envy and regret. So first, I want to give this is a public confession. So this is the first time but the public confession. I realized, to my shock, a couple years ago, to my own shock, that I was capable of envy, and the person I tell you who exactly the person I was envious of, and you know who he is, Ma Yan-ching, Baeyam King. Yeah, because he's handsome, he's successful, he's an MP, and so on and so forth. Yeah, I got envious of him. Yeah, that's right. That's why I know you.
Okay, I shall reserve my comments.
That's right. Yeah. So I find that envy and jealousy we all have, right? No matter, and my situation in life, I'm very good, right? I'm retired at 45. I made a lot of money. I'm international bestseller, blah blah blah. Right? I went to the White House, and still I'm capable of being jealous of people and envious of people. So, however, in my case, it didn't last. I was like envious of Ma Yan-ching for about 10 minutes. But I caught myself being envious. It was very funny. And so for me, my solution to those feelings is very easy. Every day I remind myself of one very simple thing, which is someday I will die. And if it's true that someday I will die, none of this matters. So in Chinese, it say 生死面前众生平等. Right? In the face of life and death, we're all equal. Yeah. So that was my solution.
Actually, the clap. Poor thing, no, he's waiting for applause, never came. No, one of the most significant things in the notes that I read, your response to a similar question by a journalist was, what happens to you when you focus on the other person? You know, because you talked about focusing on giving joy to the other person, focusing on compassion with the other person, right? And your answer was really very strong. To summarize, you said, when you do that, you're taking away focus from yourself. And the sum total of misery is from a focus on ourselves. And there's tremendous truth in that. For that 10 minutes, if you had focused on somebody else and not on yourself, and saying, it's not so much I feel he is good, I feel I'm not as good. The I feel he's good is positive.
Yeah.
I feel I'm not as good is the same thing, but that's what makes us miserable. And I thought that was really powerful. So the more we focus on the person outside with positive thoughts, you actually are not focusing on yourself. And the less we focus on ourselves, the less chance there is for us to be miserable. And I think there's tremendous wisdom in that.
Thank you.
And thank you for that. And you want to say something?
Can I close with a poem? I like
Poem?
Yeah, I want to close with a poem.
But I must close, in the end.
You must close, okay. Okay.
I envy one. I must show him who is boss.
My wife is boss, sorry. Okay, I'll close the point and then you can close for real.
Okay.
So what you just said remind me of something very beautiful I heard from a friend, a brother David. He's I think Benedictine or Franciscan priest, I can't remember. He was talking about a progression of spiritual growth, and he put it in 4 sentences, and it was beautiful. And so he talked about the relationship between self and other, and he said other for him in this point refers to God, but he said it doesn't have to be God. Other in this case can be another person. It can be the universe. It can be nirvana and so on. So he started. He said in the beginning, there's only self. There's no other. And then there is self and there's other. Later on, self and other is one. There's no difference. And finally, there is no self. There's only other.
That's
beautiful.
That's
right?
really
Yeah.
very, very true. And I just want to end by reading to you what others have said about Meng. The New Yorker, this is what they said about Meng. For years, its high priest was Steve Jobs. This is talking about Silicon Valley, a Zen enthusiast. These days, it's Meng. So this man here has been compared with Steve Jobs. Huh? Bad article. Okay. CNBC says Silicon Valley called him Silicon Valley's Zen master.
Exaggerated.
Also bad journalism. Okay. Eric Schmidt. You know who Eric Schmidt is? Executive chairman of Google. This book and the cause, this is the first book, Search Inside Yourself. This book and the cause it's based on represent one of the greatest aspects of Google's culture, that one individual with a great idea can really change the world. And I think more than anything else, if there's one thing I'm most inspired by, is that you really dare to dream. And you know that it is not going to remain a dream. And I have tremendous respect for you for that.
Thank you.
And I hope you'll never lose that. And you will have the universe conspiring to make it happen. I believe in that. And thank you very much for making the time to be with us today, even though you're from NTU.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tan, for sharing the secrets to unlocking joy in our lives. We would now like to invite Mr. Bernard To, Director of NUS Alumni Relations, to present a token of appreciation to Mr. Tan.
Although I don't have a mic, and Vishal said that he's from NTU, but we proudly give him a tie and a tie pin from NUS.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, see you, everybody.
No.
Oh, no.
See you outside. That's what it means.
Got makan, eh?
I've got Makan, and you can join him and quiz him, take autographs and so on. Actually, there's something else. Oh, what? Come up. I want to introduce you to his father. Conrad is a very dear old friend, and because of him, I got reacquainted with an old friend. He's a retired colonel in the Singapore Armed Forces and a wonderful man. And so I'm not surprised that you've created this thing. The mother, yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, please join us outside. Thank you.